I'm sitting here, petting my cat, to attempt to recover from what was the experience of watching the live-action Netflix Death Note. Now, I'm not going to start criticizing all the changes in plot in this video. I don't really believe in being a purist when it comes to adaptations. Sure, it would be nice to see an adaptation that had all the same things happen, but that would really be just watching the original source material, right? So no, that's not the problem with this movie. The problem with this movie is Light Turner. Light Turner is who we are supposed to believe is Light Yagami. But the problem is there are very few things that resemble our original protagonist. Our original protagonist is a psychopath. I'm going to quickly go through and compare the things they use to diagnose a psychopath, according to Psychology Today and another web source I have called healthyplace.org. And we're going to talk about why Light Turner is not these things and Light Yagami is, because I think that's what you'll really see is the difference. And then I'll kind of close up with why this is important to the spirit of Death Note. So the first one I'm going to start with is the one that we do actually kind of see in Light Turner, and that is a lack of guilt/remorse. Early on in the movie, Light Turner discusses, that he should feel guilty about the deaths he's causing. This is in the very beginning of using the Death Note. And that he doesn't. So, points for that. He doesn't really feel guilty. Even though later, I think he really does start to show signs of guilt when it comes to the trouble they've caused when he's talking to Miya at the end. So we've also got the lack of deep emotional connections. Now, I really want to take a few minutes to talk about this one because it's one of the biggest changes that they made. In the original anime, Light Yagami does not have deep emotional connections. He seems to vaguely not want his family to get hurt when the series first starts, but later on is mainly upset when his father dies because he doesn't actually get Nier's name, not because his father is dead. It appears to mostly be an act, and we don't actually see him feeling upset about it, an internal monologue at all. He also doesn't care about Misa. She's simply a tool, something useful to him, doesn't return any romantic affections for her. And in contrast, we've got Light Turner. Now, Light Turner is super in love with Miya from the very beginning. He's awkward around her, there's flirting, and she's really the one who, pushes him on. And we'll get a little bit more into that later when we're talking about manipulation, which is another huge aspect of someone who's a psychopath. But, yeah, Light clearly cares about Miya, even despite how the movie ends. He really cares about his dad in a way that's not completely illustrated in the anime. And he really cared about his mom. Now we've got narcissism. Now we do see a little bit of this, and that was encouraging when he's talking about how they want a god, and a god is what I'll give them. Kind of. But the difference between the anime and the movie version is that in the movie, him and Miya together are becoming Kira. They're becoming this god. And the difference is in the anime that Light Yagami, from the beginning, wants to be this god and is setting himself up to be one. The reason he initially uses heart attacks to carry out his kills is that he wants people to know they are connected. He wants people to know someone is judging them and watching them. I believe that's pretty much exactly what he says in the dub version of the anime. You know, he wants people to know that they're being judged by someone, and he is setting himself up to be that someone. He kills the people who get in his way because in his mind, his narcissistic mind, they are getting in the way of his final goals, so they deserve to be taken out. Meanwhile, an interesting change in this movie is the fact that Light Turner does not actually kill anyone who isn't a criminal until the end of the movie. But, you know, we're talking about, once again, whether the spirit of the anime was carried over, and it's not. Next we have superficial charm. This was one of the things that I noticed earliest in the movie and really annoyed me. So, the character of Light Yagami is an all-star student, son of a police officer, which in Japan, I've heard from some other people who have talked about Death Note means, you know, that's like a high level of respect, something that we may not necessarily have here to the same level, but, you know, he's a highly respected person, and he's also very, very charming. In all his interactions with people, he tends to be witty, almost funny, he smiles a lot. You know, people have a reason to trust and believe him, but we don't have any of that. You know, we have early on Light Turner showing, like, some angst and some sarcasm, and he's kind of a loser. I especially knew when they showed him selling fake homework or tests or whatever that is, you know, helping people cheat. That is not something that Light Yagami would ever do. Not only would that be against his sense of justice, but he was always viewed as, you know, this great guy. He would never want to get in the way of that image. Because that image is one of the things that helps him get away with what he gets away with for so long. His image is something that helps people trust him. And it would be way easier for people to be suspicious of Light Turner because Light Turner isn't any of those things. He's a reject with this tragic backstory, which I will get to. And, you know, he's not this beaming icon of society that people want to trust and believe. So we get to Dishonesty. I mean, that one's pretty clear-cut. For the most part, yeah, he lies and covers things up, but he does tell the truth a lot more after a while in this movie. For example, you know, he's the one who tells Mia about the Death Note instead of keeping it a secret. I don't know if that's necessarily dishonesty, but he's certainly coming clean about things he doesn't need to. At the end, he tells his father that he is Kira. You know, he openly talks about it, reveals his whole plan, like some supervillain, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, Light Yagami wouldn't do any of those things. But there's also the fact that this is a movie, it's a shorter time span. We don't get as much of the cat and mouse game, which is something I want to get into in another video. You know, kind of what you lose with the L versus light thing. But that video isn't about that, so let's go ahead and move on to the next point. Manipulativeness. Now, this is one I really wanted to talk about. And the reason I really wanted to talk about this is this movie basically makes Light Turner a victim. You know, the note falls directly to him. He's alone when it drops, which is very different from in class when Light Yagami was more simply bored, happens to notice the note and be the one to pick it up. Technically, anyone could have picked it up at that school. No, instead the note chooses him. And he's pushed to carry things out constantly throughout this movie. In the beginning, it's just Ryuk encouraging him a little bit. And that's not terrible because for time's sake, it's more of an expositional filler. But later on, you know, you've got this Mia character just constantly telling him, you know, we need to be doing more, we need to be thinking bigger picture. At one point, like, gets scared and freaked out, and, you know, she's waiting in the rain, and they have some weird Bonnie and Clyde kissing moment that they have, like, a bunch of times in this movie, and kind of, gives him the encouragement to keep going. There's actually multiple times he wants to quit in this movie, that he wants to run away from it. I mean, he's standing up there on the Ferris wheel and asks her to run away together. And there's nothing from his ending speech that makes me think that was some sort of play that he always knew she was going to say no. I really think he wanted that. He wanted to get away from it. And the reason for that is when he's sitting with Elle in the restaurant and they're having what was actually a decent set of dialogue back and forth, he says, maybe we want the same thing. Maybe we both want the killings to stop. And that was really frustrating to me, because that just proved they set him up as a victim. This kind of just fell into his hands, as something he says a couple times in the movie. And that's not true. Instead of being the manipulative one, being a psychopath, Light Turner is being manipulated by the characters around him. So I just want to reiterate what the number one problem with this movie is. The problem is that Light Turner is a victim. He's pushed on by circumstances that many of us can relate to. His mother is killed by a criminal, justice has not been done, and the death note falls into his hands, and he's pushed on by this scary death god to take out justice. Who could blame him for wanting to kill his mother's killer, right? Who could blame him for wanting to right this wrong by society? At least from a story standpoint, not a legal standpoint, obviously, but... And that's the problem. Light Yagami is an honor student with a family, a sister. They seem to be fairly well off. He goes to a nice college. He's not a victim. He's a purveyor of justice, his own sick, twisted version of justice. And the thing is, that makes us ask questions. Is he a bad guy? He's so focused on carrying out justice and creating a new world, a world without criminals, that some would say that he is not. I personally say he is, due to my perhaps old-fashioned sense of morality and right and wrong. But it does make you think about what this power could do and what it could do for the world. Meanwhile, this movie is just a Bonnie and Clyde romance with themes sort of sprinkled in an attempt to make you think about them. But at the end of the day, it's really this kid with a messed up life who impresses a girl with a book. That's it, And am I curious with how the movie ends, if they can save the characterization of Light? I don't think they can. Even if he has shifted now to being slightly more psychopathic tendencies, he'll never truly be a psychopath because he didn't match the things on this list. Because he's a tragic sort of anti-hero instead of a psychopathic questioning of morality. And that's the number one issue with the Death Note movie. And there's a lot of other things to dive into. I didn't talk about L, I didn't talk about Ryuk, I didn't talk in detail about Mia, and the changes that were made there. There's also plenty of random nitpicky things that just don't make sense to me. They changed some of the rules in the note. So, I might consider going over all of that. Let me know if you disagree with me. Let me know if you think there are redeeming parts of the way Light is characterized. I want to specifically focus on that in this video, so try not to comment about other stuff. But yeah, let me know. That is my opening thoughts on Death Note, the Netflix edition.